The gavel hit harder than my brother's laughter ever did. My name's Mason LeClaire, 29, the kind of mechanic who fixes engines that gave up years ago. The day Mom's will was read, Lucas stood beside a velvet briefcase packed with $35 million in gold bars. Cameras flashed. His smile could have powered the courthouse lights. My gift? A small cardboard box sealed with brittle tape and Mom's handwriting. For Mason, when truth matters. Laughter rolled through the room. I felt my chest cave in. Even the lawyer's voice cracked when she said, "Item Dexter 12, to be verified in court." Back then, I thought that box was a joke. I didn't know it would reopen every lie, every scar, every secret Mom took to her grave, or that when the judge finally pried it open, the world would fall silent. It wasn't the gold that blinded me. It was everyone's laughter. The courthouse conference room smelled like old wood polish and money, two things my family had always worshipped. My brother, Lucas Leclerc, adjusted his designer cufflinks like the cameras were there for him, not Mom's will. He'd already won before the lawyer even spoke. His smile stretched wider with every legal phrase, every pause that ended in his name. To my eldest son, Lucas, Iris Bloom read, "I leave my estate holdings and physical assets stored under account 442B, to include the full inventory of gold bars valued at $35 million. A murmur rippled through the room. Even the court clerk's jaw twitched. Lucas grinned, brushing invisible dust off his jacket. "Guess hard work pays off," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, though we both knew his work was networking and luck. Then Iris cleared her throat. To my younger son, Mason LeClaire, I straightened, palms sweating. Maybe she left me at the workshop. Maybe even Dad's old car. A personal item to be verified in court. Item number 12. The clerk wheeled in a small cardboard box, dented and taped shut like something shipped from a forgotten attic. Laughter echoed, Lucas first, then his friends, everyone trying not to. I felt their amusement burn across my skin. Iris avoided my eyes. "It's labeled, for Mason, when truth matters." "Maybe it's a lesson in humility," Lucas whispered, leaning back with his perfect smirk. I wanted to walk out, but something about Mom's handwriting stopped me. That looping L she only used when she was nervous. My throat tightened. I tore at the brittle tape until one corner peeled back, revealing yellowed cardboard and a faint smell of oil like the garage where she used to watch me fix cars after Dad died. Under the flap, my finger caught on something rough, a folded scrap of parchment. Not a letter. A map fragment, hand-drawn in pencil with a small emblem in the corner. A courthouse seal, faint but clear. Lucas noticed me pause. "Oh, what's that?" "A treasure map, Mace. Maybe there's a gold sticker at the end." His laughter filled the room again. I didn't answer. The edges of the map were burned, as if it had been torn from a larger piece. Numbers and faded lines traced through what looked like property boundaries, maybe even ours. My chest pounded. Why would Mom leave a map when she had millions in assets? The judge called for closing signatures. My hand shook as I picked up the pen. Then I saw it carved faintly into the wood of Judge Avery's podium. That same courthouse seal from the map. Same lines, same crown shape, same initials, MLC, Margaret LeClaire's initials. I froze mid-signature, pulse racing. The laughter blurred into a low hum. The box wasn't a joke. It was a message. And Mom had just delivered it from the grave. I knew bolts and engines, not family secrets. That night I couldn't sleep. The map fragment sat on my workbench between a wrench and a half-fixed carburetor, its pencil lines almost mocking me under the flickering shop light. Engines made sense. Fuel, fire, movement. But this? This was Mom's handwriting mixed with symbols that didn't belong in my world. The courthouse seal at the corner haunted me. I'd seen it before, just didn't know where. I flipped through old paperwork stacked beside the register, invoices, titles, and loan slips. The smell of motor oil clung to everything. Then I found it. A faded car title for a 1969 Ford Torino, the one Mom had given me when I first opened the shop. And there it was. The same seal, stamped in blue ink at the bottom. I brought the paper closer under the light. Margaret LeClaire Trust, LLC. Trust. My mother had never trusted anyone, not even her sons. So why name a company after that word? And who was the second signatory? The scrawl beside her name didn't belong to Lucas or Dad. The world tilted for a second. Maybe Mom hadn't left me a message. Maybe she left me evidence. My phone buzzed on the counter. A notification from Lucas's account. He'd posted a photo, himself standing beside the gold bars, captioned, "Some of us inherit legacy. Some get cardboard." The comment stung like gravel under tires. Guess we know who the favorite was. Poor Mason, maybe the box had tissues. I slammed the phone down. Screw you, Lucas. Anger gave me focus. I pulled out Mom's old filing box, the one she used for registration slips and property papers. Dust filled the air as I flipped through decades of documents. Nothing about a trust, nothing about gold. Then, near the back, a thick envelope labeled Torino, title plus insurance. Inside was the same title but taped to its inner flap. Something thin glinted in the light. A metal key, small and old, the kind used for deposit lockers or storage units. Someone had wrapped it in electrical tape to keep it from rattling. On the tag, faded ink read, Locker 314, Union Station. Union Station. That's downtown. I sat back, heart racing. Mom never went downtown. She hated crowds. If she'd hidden something there, it had to matter. I ran my thumb over the key's ridged surface. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried more than metal. Noah, my best friend, walked in just then, still smelling like welding fumes. "You look like you found buried treasure," he said, grabbing a rag. "Maybe I did," I said, handing him the map and key. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to open that kind of door?" I looked down at the key again, the tag's letters barely readable. "Locker 314, I whispered. "If Mom left me this, I need to know why." Outside, thunder cracked against the tin roof, echoing through the shop like a warning. I pocketed the key. Whatever waited in that locker, truth or trouble, I was done being the forgotten son. Keys open doors only if you survive what's behind them. Union Station hadn't changed much since I was a kid. Same cracked marble floors, same smell of iron and old rain. The locker room was empty except for a flickering light and the distant echo of a janitor's radio. I stood in front of locker 314, the metal rusted around the edges, the lock so old it felt like part of the wall. The key in my hand was cold. Mom had taped it shut for a reason. Maybe she wanted me to find it, just not too soon. My pulse thudded in my throat as I slid the key in and turned. It resisted at first, then clicked. The door creaked open. Inside sat a small brown envelope, brittle with age. No gold, no letters, no hidden will, just a single photograph wrapped in tissue paper. I unfolded it carefully. The air smelled faintly of perfume and dust. The photo was of Mom, smiling, really smiling in a way I hadn't seen since before Dad's accident. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a man I didn't recognize, about her age, wearing a suit and a pendant with that same courthouse seal carved in silver. His hand rested gently on Mom's shoulder. My stomach tightened. Who was he? The back of the photo had handwriting. Mom's again. 4 words. He deserved half. Half of what? The gold? The estate? The words burned holes in my thoughts. I stared at the man's face, trying to place him. Something about him looked familiar. His sharp jawline, the watch on his wrist. I could almost hear Mom's voice saying, "Some debts aren't money, Mason." I snapped a quick picture of the photograph and texted it to Noah. "Recognize him?" He replied a minute later. "No clue. Looks like an old lawyer or banker. Check county records." I looked around. A security guard stood near the hallway, eyeing me like I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't. I shoved the photo back in the envelope, slid it into my jacket, and shut the locker. As I walked out, I passed a cracked advertisement on the wall. Union Station Investments. Building futures since 1984. The name punched through my brain like static. Leclerc Investments had worked with that firm before Dad died. Outside, rain started to fall, thin, cold lines under the streetlights. I stood under the awning, heart pounding, pulling out my phone. I searched the archives for Union Station Investments founder. A black and white image appeared. My breath caught. Same face, same pendant. Same man, Henry Bloom. The last name hit harder than the rain. Bloom. The same as Iris Bloom, Mom's lawyer. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Mom's lawyer was the daughter of the man in the photo, her secret partner. The man she thought deserved half of $35 million in gold. I shoved my phone into my pocket and looked back toward the station entrance. The lights inside flickered once like the building was holding its breath. If Henry Bloom handled the family's investments, then Lucas's inheritance might not be what it looked like. And Mom's map wasn't leading me to the treasure. It was leading me straight into a buried war. The dead can't talk, but they can confess on film. By morning, the rain had turned the streets into silver ribbons. I barely slept. The photo of Mom and Henry Bloom kept flashing in my mind like a film reel stuck on repeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, the same one she used to hide pain. I parked outside the county archives, the kind of place that smelled like mildew and forgotten promises. Inside, a gray-haired clerk gave me a half-hearted nod when I said my mother's name. Leclerc? That's an old one. Check Section D, Real Estate and Trust Filings. I spent hours combing through faded ledgers, property transfers, and legal journals. Then, near the bottom of a stack, I found a thick leather-bound book, initials HB embossed on the spine. Henry Bloom's personal journal. The first few pages were business notes, property holdings, mining contracts, investor signatures. Then the tone changed. A softer, more personal hand began appearing between entries. The handwriting wasn't Henry's, it was Mom's. Her loops were unmistakable. My fingers traced the faded ink. Joint acquisition, $35 million in gold, unregistered, held under separate trusts to avoid seizure. Securing. I froze. Gold, the same amount Lucas bragged about. Mom and Henry had worked together off the record. At the end of the page, a single line stopped me cold. Keep his name off official documents. If Lucas finds out, he'll destroy everything. My pulse raced. Lucas knew. That meant they would have the gold, maybe all of it, which was built on a lie. I took photos of every page, just in case. The journal was fragile. Edges burned at one corner like it had survived a fire. That burn mark? It looked almost deliberate, as if someone tried to erase part of the truth. I needed answers. Fast. I drove straight to Iris Bloom's downtown office, the same woman who'd read the will with a blank face. She looked startled when I walked in, dripping rain on her marble floor. "Mason," she said tightly, standing. "You can't just show up like this." I placed the journal on her desk. "Recognize this?" Her eyes widened for a second, just long enough to tell me she did. That's not mine." "It belonged to your father," I said, "and my mother. Together." She stiffened. "You shouldn't have that." Her reaction wasn't fear. It was panic. "There's a confidentiality clause protecting my late father's clients. You're in dangerous territory." I leaned forward. So was my mom, apparently. The silence stretched. She finally whispered, "Whatever's in there, you should burn it. Burn it." The word sent a chill through me. When I left her office, I pulled the journal from my jacket pocket again. The charred corner brushed against my thumb, leaving a faint trace of soot. And that's when I remembered. A scar on Lucas's forearm shaped like a half-moon burn. He'd said it was from a welding accident. But the mark was in the same curve, same edge as the burned section of Henry's journal. He hadn't found that fire. He'd started it. Scars tell better stories than people do. By the time I pulled into Lucas's driveway, the sun was already sinking behind the oak trees, painting the mansion in gold and shadow. Fitting, I thought everything about him was gold-plated and hollow underneath. The air smelled like whiskey and fresh-cut grass. Lucas stood on the porch, sleeves rolled up, showing off that scar on his arm like it was a badge of honor. "You look like hell, Mason," he said, smirking as he leaned against the doorframe. "Come to ask for a loan?" I didn't answer. I just held up Henry Bloom's journal, wrapped in a plastic sleeve. "Recognize this?" His grin faltered. "Where'd you get that?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "It's Mom's handwriting. You told everyone she burned the records years ago." He scoffed. "She did. I saw her do it." I stepped closer, voice low. "Funny, the burn pattern matches the scar on your arm." He looked down at it, then up at me, jaw tightening. You're losing it, little brother. Mom was trying to protect me from her bad deals. She burned everything to save the family name. Or maybe she was protecting the truth, I said, flipping open the journal to the page marked with her initials. Because this says she didn't trust you. He laughed, sharp, fake, too loud. You really think that old book proves anything? You're just jealous, Mason. You've always been. Before I could reply, a woman stepped into the hallway behind him, one of his rich friends, a wine glass in hand. She looked at me like I was the help. Everything okay, Luke? Yeah, he said, still staring me down. My brother's just obsessed with fairy tales. I left before my temper did something I couldn't undo. The night air hit like ice. My hands shook as I slid into the driver's seat and tossed the journal onto the passenger side. The burned corner caught my eye again, blackened around the edges, almost hiding a shape beneath the soot. I rubbed it gently with my thumb until the ash cleared. Beneath it was the edge of a photograph, old, brittle, half stuck to the page. I peeled it loose. It was Lucas, maybe 17, standing beside Mom's workshop, holding that same journal, smiling like he'd just stolen something important. The corner of the photo was burned too, by the same fire. I stared at his teenage face. He wasn't the victim of that fire. He caused it. I called Noah. You were right, I said. Lucas knew about the gold long before Mom died. Noah's voice crackled through the speaker. Then it's time we make this public. He started digging through property archives and tax records, finding mentions of unlisted trust accounts and unregistered assets under our mother's maiden name. Every new file pulled another thread from the family image Lucas had built. Hours later, Noah sent me a screenshot, a set of coordinates scribbled on one of the archived maps. They matched the faded numbers drawn on the edge of Mom's original map fragment, the one I'd found in the box. I opened the message and stared at it until the numbers seared into my mind. When I traced them on Google Earth, my stomach turned cold. The pin landed on a county storage vault buried beneath City Hall. Whatever Mom hid down there, it was time to open it. If Mom hid gold, it wasn't for display cases. City Hall looked different at night, emptier, colder, like it knew secrets it couldn't say out loud. The basement smelled like damp concrete and government dust. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make me feel like I was being watched. Noah had managed to get me temporary access to the county storage vault, claiming it was for a family estate review. I flashed the fake clearance at the sleepy clerk who didn't care enough to look twice. He pointed toward a steel door at the end of the hall. Vaults that way. Don't touch anything that looks federal. The door creaked open like something in an old movie. Rows of boxes and metal crates stretched across the room, tagged with names, dates, and codes. I scanned each label until one caught my eye, M. L. Desmarais. My mother's maiden name. I froze. She hadn't used that name since before she married Dad. What was she hiding under it? I stepped closer. The crate was old, stamped with a faded Leclerc investment sticker. My heart kicked against my ribs as I pulled the latch. Empty. Nothing but dust and a single wax-sealed envelope, buried under a thin layer of gold residue. The edges shimmered faintly when my flashlight hit them. Mom must have kept something here once, maybe the missing gold itself, but now it was gone. I knelt, brushing my fingers over the envelope. The red wax seal bore the same courthouse insignia I'd seen on the map. My stomach twisted. She'd sealed it herself. Inside was a draft court order, never filed, dated 2 months before her death. The handwriting on the margins was messy, rushed. It named both sons, Lucas and me, as co-beneficiaries of a joint account under the Bloom-Leclerc Trust. There it was, proof she never intended for Lucas to take everything. I exhaled, half relief, half dread. If this got out, it would destroy Lucas's image, maybe even the company. But that wasn't what scared me most. It was the realization that Mom had been planning something legal, something official, and someone had stopped her before she could file it. The door behind me slammed. I turned, nearly dropping the envelope. Iris Bloom stood in the doorway, heels clicking against the concrete. Her face was pale, jaw tight, eyes locked on the crate. "Mason," she said, voice trembling. "You shouldn't be here." "You knew," I said, holding up the document. "You and your father, you both worked with her. Why hide this?" Her tone hardened. "Put that down. You lied in court. You said there was nothing left under her maiden name. You helped Lucas cover it up." She stepped closer, her shadow slicing across the floor. "You don't understand. That file was meant to stay sealed. Your mother made mistakes, dangerous ones." "Dangerous?" I laughed bitterly. She was trying to protect me. "You don't know what's at stake," she said through gritted teeth. "Give me the envelope before you ruin everything." Her hand trembled slightly as she reached toward it. The air between us felt sharp, charged. I tightened my grip around the envelope. Not this time. Her expression flickered, fear, guilt, something else, before she whispered, "You have no idea what's coming, Mason." And for the first time, I believed her. When lawyers panic, truth costs a fortune. I followed Iris out of the vault, the wax-sealed envelope burning a hole in my pocket. Her heels clicked fast against the marble floor, echoing down the empty corridor like a countdown. She didn't say a word until we stepped outside into the heavy midnight air. "Get in the car," she said quietly. Not a request, an order. I hesitated, but something in her face, the shaking hands, the glassy eyes, told me she wasn't trying to threaten me. She was scared. I slid into the passenger seat. She started the engine and drove without speaking. Past City Hall, past the courthouse until we stopped in front of a deserted parking lot behind her office building. She killed the headlights and finally turned to me. "Lucas paid me," she said flatly. "After your mother died, he offered me money to suppress certain records my father kept." I stared at her. Records about what? About the gold. About the trust. My father and your mother agreed in the books on protecting assets from seizure during an audit. When she died, Lucas wanted everything erased. I didn't know how far he'd go. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the envelope. "This proves she meant for both of us to inherit." "Why didn't you tell the court?" "Because Lucas threatened to expose me," she whispered. "He has proof I altered signatures for him before. I was trying to protect my career." I leaned back, disgusted. "So you buried my mother's truth to keep your job." She didn't argue. Instead, she reached into her bag and handed me something small, wrapped in tissue. "Your mother gave this to my father a week before she died. He never turned it in. Said it was meant for the court if anything ever happened to her." I unwrapped it. A black audio cassette, the label written in Mom's handwriting. "For the court." My fingers trembled as I pulled my phone from my pocket, using an adapter I kept in the glove box. The tape hissed, then a familiar voice filled the car, soft, careful, tired. "If this reaches the court, it means my sons are at war. The gold, it was meant to unite them. But Lucas changed the documents. He forged the beneficiary clause." My chest tightened. "Mom," I whispered. Then another voice broke through Lucas's, sharp, angry. "Erase this. She doesn't know what she's saying." There was shuffling, a muffled argument, then Mom again, louder this time, desperate. "You'll regret this, Lucas. I have proof." Snap. The tape jerked, the sound cutting off mid-word. The cassette had broken. The car went silent except for the low hum of the engine. Iris stared at the dashboard, her knuckles white. "Do you understand now?" she said softly. "He didn't just take your inheritance. He rewrote history." I looked at the snapped tape in my hands, the film curling like a dead snake. "I'm done staying quiet," I said. "If this is war, he started it." And in that quiet, for the first time, I saw fear in Iris Bloom's eyes. Not of Lucas, but of what I might do next. Voices of the dead don't lie. They get silenced. The broken cassette sat on my kitchen table like a body waiting for an autopsy. I barely touched my coffee, just kept staring at the tangled black ribbon of tape hanging out the side. Every time I thought about Mom's voice, about how it cut off mid-sentence, my stomach knotted. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I wrapped the cassette in a soft cloth, drove an hour out to Riverbend Audio Restoration, a small sound lab Noah had found online. The guy who ran it, an older tech named Carl, looked like he'd been awake since the 90s. He held the tape up to the light. "This is old. Might take a miracle." "Just try," I said. He nodded. "Come back in a few hours." Those hours dragged like wet concrete. I wandered the block, checking my phone every few minutes, expecting a call from Lucas, or maybe Iris, or maybe someone worse. By the time Carl called me back, my nerves were raw. He slid a printed sheet across the counter, a sound wave printout. Tape's fragile, but I pulled fragments. Most of it's noise. But look here. Across the jagged lines of static, one pattern repeated in clear spikes, 6 distinct words. Safe deposit, Bloom Leclerc Trust. I felt the air leave my lungs. Your mother said that phrase twice before the tape snapped, Carl said. That's all I could salvage. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to prove she'd known about a safe deposit account and enough to make Lucas sweat. By noon, I was standing in the county clerk's office, filing an emergency motion to freeze Lucas's inheritance until the origin of the assets could be verified. The clerk read the statement twice, raising his eyebrows. You sure you want to do this? It'll make things public. Good, I said. It's time someone saw who he really is. The filing hit the system within hours. The local news picked it up by evening. Younger Leclerc brother challenges gold inheritance in court. Lucas's lawyers moved fast. By midnight, my phone buzzed with a notification from his attorney's office. Lucas Leclerc versus Mason Leclerc, defamation and false accusation suit. I laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that comes from exhaustion, not humor. Of course, he'd fight dirty. He always had. Noah called minutes later. Mace, you need to get ahead of this. He's trying to bury you under legal fees before the hearing even starts. I don't care, I said. Mom left proof. We just have to make them listen. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. Mr. Leclerc, he said, handing me a sealed envelope. You're being subpoenaed. I tore it open. Notice of evidence retrieval. Item Narn 12. Cardboard box, formerly in possession of Mason Leclerc. My throat went dry. That box, the one from Mom's will, the one everyone had laughed at, was now official court evidence. I watched the deputy walk away, then looked back at the table where the cassette once sat. For the first time, I realized the truth wasn't just coming out. It was being dragged piece by piece into the light. Everyone stared at my box like it was Pandora's. The courtroom smelled like paper, sweat, and cheap cologne. The scent of people pretending to be clean while hiding something rotten. Reporters filled every seat, cameras flashing like lightning every few seconds. I sat at the defense table, my palms slick against the wood. Across from me, Lucas looked like a man who'd already written his own victory speech. His lawyer, a shark in a blue suit, whispered something to him that made him grin. Judge Avery entered, his robe swaying as the bailiff called for order. Court is now in session for Leclerc versus Leclerc. The sound of that title hit me harder than I expected. My own name is divided into 2. Iris Bloom sat in the front row, pale and motionless. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Judge Avery cleared his throat. Before we proceed with the defamation claim, the court has received a petition from Mr. Mason Leclerc regarding newly discovered evidence. He turned toward me. Mr. Leclerc, approach. I stood, knees stiff, heart hammering. The bailiff wheeled out item number 1, the same dented cardboard box that started all of this. The laughter I remembered from the first will reading echoed faintly in my head, but this time, no one laughed. The judge nodded to the clerk. Open it. The clerk sliced through the brittle tape. A hush fell over the room. Inside, beneath layers of old newspaper, was something I hadn't seen before. A flat, rusted metal plate about the size of a dinner tray. Faded etchings covered its surface. The clerk lifted it with gloved hands and placed it on the evidence table. Judge Avery leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. What am I looking at, Mr. Leclerc? I stepped closer. My mother's handwriting led me here. The plate was sealed inside the box. It bears 2 engraved signatures, Margaret Leclerc and Henry Blue, and the courthouse insignia. It proves they were co-owners of the gold assets that my brother now claims were his alone. Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras flashed again, brighter, faster. The judge tilted the plate toward the light. These signatures, they're authentic? I had them analyzed yesterday, I said, handing over a notarized report. It's real. They both signed it 20 years ago. Lucas shot to his feet. "That's fake," he shouted, face flushed red. He planted it. Judge Avery's gavel cracked through the air. "Sit down, Mr. LeClaire." But Lucas didn't. He stormed toward the evidence table, his lawyer shouting after him. "That's a lie!" he yelled, grabbing the edge of the plate. "You think you can steal what's mine?" The bailiff lunged, too late. Lucas jerked the plate off the table, slamming it against the floor. The metallic clang rang through the courtroom. Reporters scrambled, flashes blinding everyone. "Get him restrained," the judge barked. Two officers pulled Lucas back as he shouted, spitting rage. "It's all mine. She promised it to me. She—" "Enough," Judge Avery roared. Lucas's lawyer buried his face in his hands. Iris stared down, trembling. The judge waited until silence returned, then adjusted his glasses again, voice low but steady. "This court will recess for a final review of the new evidence. We reconvene tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp." The gavel struck once more, echoing like thunder. As people rose, whispers filled the room. Cameras turned toward me. For years, Lucas had owned the narrative, the mansion, the money, the family pride. But now, standing in that flood of flashbulbs, I realized something. He might still have the gold, but I had the truth. And tomorrow, the whole world would hear it. The moment gold met greed, my brother lost everything. By the next morning, Lucas's meltdown was everywhere. Clips of him lunging for the metal plate flooded every social feed within hours. Rainy courtroom footage, shaky phone recordings, slow-motion replays of his face twisted in rage. The headlines were brutal. Leclerc air attacks judge's evidence. $35 million in gold and one public breakdown. I watched the footage from my truck, parked outside the courthouse. My stomach churned. This wasn't how I'd wanted justice, not through humiliation, but deep down. I knew it was inevitable. Lucas had built his empire on image, and that image was crumbling in real time. When I walked through the courthouse doors, reporters swarmed me. "Mason, did you expect your brother to react that way? Is it true your mother planned to split the gold? Do you think the public will forgive him?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking, head down, gripping the manila folder under my arm. Inside were the verified copies of the plate's engravings and the lab report confirming Mom's and Henry Bloom's signatures. The hearing reconvened in a packed courtroom. Lucas sat stiff in his chair, sunglasses hiding eyes that looked bloodshot even from a distance. His lawyer spoke in a low, desperate tone, while reporters filled every available space. Judge Avery entered and immediately addressed the room. Yesterday's events were regrettable. However, the evidence presented by Mr. Mason Leclerc is now officially logged into the court record. The bailiff placed a small television on the table. Press footage from multiple angles showing Lucas's outburst. The judge pressed play. We all watched in silence as Lucas's voice filled the room again, shouting, grabbing, snapping. The audio was clear. "It's all mine. She promised it to me." When the clip ended, the judge folded his hands. "Thank you to the attending media for voluntarily providing footage. This recording will serve as official corroboration of behavior and intent." Lucas's lawyer objected, citing privacy violations. The judge shut him down with a glare. Then a quiet voice spoke from the gallery. "Your Honor," said Iris Bloom, standing shakily, "may I submit additional evidence?" The room turned to her. She looked smaller than before, drained but resolute. "These are my father's original files," she continued, holding up a folder. They confirmed that the gold was co-owned by Henry Bloom and Margaret Leclerc. My client's son, Lucas, bribed me to suppress this truth. I can't carry that lie anymore. The judge gestured for the bailiff to collect the documents. The air in the room shifted heavy, electric. For a second, even Lucas stopped breathing. When the judge finished skimming the papers, he looked up, eyes sharp. "These align with the metal plate and Mrs. Leclerc's draft court order." I felt something inside me loosen, a triumph, not relief, just release. For the first time since Mom died, the truth had a voice. Judge Avery turned toward me. "Mr. Mason Leclerc, your credibility has been restored in full. The court thanks you for your persistence." Lucas muttered something under his breath, eyes fixed on the floor. The judge shuffled his papers, pausing before he rose. "However," he said, tone suddenly heavy, "this case isn't concluded yet." He adjusted his glasses, gaze sweeping the courtroom. "There's one more document the court has yet to examine, a sealed attachment found within Exhibit 12. A murmur spread through the room. My heart skipped. The box. Mom's box still had one more secret left to tell. Justice wasn't hidden, it was waiting in plain sight. The courtroom lights felt harsher that morning, bouncing off the polished wood and gleaming microphones. My heart thudded as Judge Avery lifted a thin folder sealed in red tape. The bailiff whispered something to him, then set Mom's cardboard box, Exhibit 12, back on the evidence table. "This document," the judge said, "was discovered taped to the inside lid of the original exhibit. It appears to be an addendum to the late Margaret Leclerc's will." Iris sat behind me, her hands clasped tight. Lucas leaned forward, pale and silent, the arrogance finally stripped from his face. The judge carefully unfolded the paper. The handwriting matches Mrs. Leclerc's, though the page lacks notarization. Nonetheless, it bears two signatures, Margaret Leclerc and one witness, Henry Bloom. He began to read. "In the event of my passing, the entirety of the Bloom-Leclerc Gold Trust shall be divided equally between my sons. 50% shall remain family inheritance, and the remaining 50% shall be allocated to the Leclerc Foundation for Youth, Trades, and Education, to be established under my son Mason's stewardship." My breath caught. The courtroom went still. The judge continued. "The purpose of this trust, as stated, is to ensure both sons contribute to something that lasts beyond wealth." I felt my hands tremble. Mom hadn't meant for revenge or even justice in the way I imagined it. She wanted balance, a way to give Lucas his power and me a purpose. Lucas broke the silence with a bitter laugh. "So that's it? She wanted to make him look like some kind of saint? Half to charity, half to me?" Judge Avery frowned. "Mr. Leclerc, you'd be wise to remain quiet. Your mother's intent is clear. The issue before us now is whether this clause, though unsigned by a notary, carries moral weight in court." My lawyer leaned toward me. "If the court rules it valid, you'll control the trust. You could redirect funds anywhere, even to yourself." I shook my head slowly, staring at the will. "That's not what she wanted." Iris's voice broke through softly. "She used to talk about that, you know. How she regretted raising her sons to compete instead of cooperate." I turned, meeting her eyes for the first time without anger. "Did she ever say why she trusted me with it?" "She said you still fix things," Iris whispered. "That you didn't destroy them when they stopped working." The judge called for a brief recess, giving the lawyers time to review the document. The room buzzed with whispers from reporters, clerks, spectators, everyone trying to process the twist. I stood there, holding the will, tracing Mom's looping signature with my thumb. The ink had faded, but her intent hadn't. Half of $35 million. I could rebuild everything I'd lost, the garage, the family name, even my life. Or I could honor what she truly wanted and pour it into the foundation that would help kids who'd never been given a chance. The judge called out, "Mr. Leclerc, we'll need your position when we reconvene." I swallowed hard, looking between Lucas's glare and Mom's gentle handwriting. The gold was finally mine to claim, but so was the choice. Not all treasure shines. Some redeems. The final day of court didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure wrapped in silence. Cameras lined the steps outside, reporters whispering my name, waiting for a quote I wasn't ready to give. Inside, the air was still, thick with the weight of what came next. Judge Avery adjusted his glasses, voice steady. "After reviewing all evidence, this court recognizes the revised clause of Margaret Leclerc's will as a statement of intent. While not legally binding in its incomplete form, the court acknowledges the moral integrity of its contents and leaves execution of the clause to the discretion of her surviving son, Mason Leclerc." The gavel struck. The sound echoed through my bones. It was over. Lucas sat motionless beside his lawyer. His empire, his company, his image, the illusion of success had already started collapsing. Iris's testimony sealed it. She'd stood on the witness stand and admitted everything. The bribes, the forged records, the silenced evidence. Her voice shook, but it didn't waver. When she finished, she looked at me with a quiet apology that said more than words ever could. Lucas's fraud charges would take months to play out, but in that moment, he looked small for the first time in his life. The gold he'd guarded so desperately had become his own chain. When the court adjourned, Judge Avery stepped down from the bench and walked toward me. "Mr. Leclerc," he said softly, "your mother would be proud. Few men choose honor when they're handed fortune." I nodded, unable to speak. "Thank you, Your Honor." Outside, I faced the cameras at last. "I'm not keeping the gold," I said simply. "Half will go to the Leclerc Foundation, just as my mother wanted. The rest will remain in trust for the community she loved." Questions exploded around me, but I walked away before the noise could drown me again. Months passed. The court saga became yesterday's headline, replaced by the next scandal. Lucas disappeared from the public eye. Iris began working pro bono for small-town clients, maybe trying to make amends. And me? I went back to the one place where everything started, the garage. The old sign was gone. In its place hung a new one, Leclerc Trust Auto Center. The smell of engine oil and metal felt different now, not like survival, but purpose. Kids from the neighborhood came after school, learning how to rebuild engines, fix brakes, and earn something with their own hands. The first scholarship recipient, a shy 17-year-old named Ray, held up his first wrench and grinned like it was gold. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the town, I stood outside the shop with Noah. "You think she'd approve?" I asked. He smiled. "She'd say you finally figured out what kind of man you were meant to be." The sign creaked softly in the wind. I looked up at it, the letters catching the last light of day. Mom was right. Not all treasure is meant to be kept. Some is meant to be shared, to fix what's broken, to teach others how to start again. "Family isn't measured in gold," I whispered. "It's proven in truth." If you've ever been undervalued, remember, integrity is the only inheritance that lasts. Subscribe for more stories of hidden justice and redemption.